I'm Fiona Gill. I live in Udimore Road and I'm married to Ian, who runs a sports shop. I'm the minister of Rye Baptist Church, and before I did this, quite a long time before, I was a dancing teacher, qualified in ballet, modern and tap dancing, and I ran a dancing school for 10 years. Ian and I have got two children, they're twins, they're in their 30s now, both are married, one living in Hastings, one in Oxford, and we've got a grandson who's 5 months old, and he's really lovely. I was born in Hastings and always lived in Hastings mostly all my life until we moved to Rye. I was born into a working class family, I guess. Sport shop's always been in our family, and my parents were the sort of generation that sent their children to Sunday school. They didn't actually go themselves, but they sent me and my brother off to Sunday school, which was great, and I absolutely loved it. We attended there quite regularly, and what happened in the end was, while I absolutely loved Sunday school and got such a lot out of it, I also was mad keen as a child and as I grew up on dancing, and I just loved it. I ate, slept, dreamt and breathed dancing, and it just got to be more and more of a thing in my life, so that it took all my spare time when I wasn't at school or doing those sorts of things, and so I drifted away from church and didn't really go during my teens at all. As I grew up, I just desperately wanted to train to be a dance teacher and eventually perhaps to run my own school, and everything was headed towards that aim. I left school at 16 to start training to be a dance teacher, and absolutely loved it. In the meantime, I'd joined the Amateur Dramatic Society, and Ian, that was where I met my husband Ian, and we were in a show together. I was dancing on the stage and he was playing in the orchestra, and we connected during Oklahoma, actually it was, and the rest is history, as they say. Anyway, we got married 2 or 3 years later, and it was really important to both of us that we got married in church, and then we had our children. It was really important that we said thank you for them to God, and that they were christened as babies. And then we really didn't go to church much after that. We carried on with the Amateur Dramatic Society, and eventually Ian and I got into the production side, so I was producing shows and choreographing them, and he was the musical director, and we spent many years doing that. As regards the faith side of things, as the children got older, they started to ask questions about God, and it was when they asked the crunch question, which was, if God is Jesus' father, then who is Jesus' granddad? And we both thought, oh goodness, we don't know how to answer this one, so they'd better go to Sunday school. And at the time, the children were going to a preschool at a Methodist church in St Leonard's, and so we thought we'd take them along to the Sunday school there. And Ian took them along to start with, and then he said, actually it's really good, I'm really enjoying it, why don't you come too? So we both ended up going. Ian latched into the music group really quickly, and I just went along, started to get to know people, really enjoyed it. I think all the time God had all this planned, how he was organising it, because not only that, but we'd moved house and our new neighbours were Christians from the Salvation Army, and their daughter came to babysit for us quite frequently while we were off at our Amdram rehearsals. And then eventually the girl that was babysitting for us said to me one day, would you like to come to this thing that's going on at the grammar school? And she said it's a really famous person, he's giving a talk, and I just wondered if you'd like to come with me. So it turned out it was Billy Graham, and it was a live link to the Billy Graham event in London. And so I went along with her to that, and it was an amazing event because it just felt like he was speaking directly to me, and it just spoke straight to my heart, and I just knew I'd got to do something about it. And at the end of the talk, there was a call to come to the front if this has been speaking to you and you want to give your life to Jesus. And somehow I found myself at the front. I have no idea to this day how I got there, but I must have walked there, but it was definitely under the impulse of the Holy Spirit, because that was my first experience of anything like that, really. And I made this commitment. I invited Jesus into my heart and my life, and from then on I've never really looked back. I always had a love of reading. I've read such a lot, and from that point my reading turned to reading Christian novels and the Bible and finding out more and more about what it was to live the Christian life. Eventually we moved to another church and we got more involved. I started to get involved with singing with the worship group. One day I was asked to lead worship, and that was quite a daunting thing because I'd always been terribly shy. I'd always danced on the stage, but as far as opening my mouth and speaking or singing in front of anybody went, that was just a complete no-no. But gradually God overcame all my inhibitions, if you like, and gradually all my hang-ups about speaking in public and singing in public, anything like that, was completely overcome. Yeah, I continued to struggle with shyness, but gradually over the years, God has worked in my heart and given me the confidence that I've needed to be able to do things that I would never in a million years have dreamed that I'd be able to do. And then as things went on, I started to feel more and more that I wanted to serve God, and in a big way. And that just got more and more intense. That feeling was much stronger, and I knew I loved him deeply, and that following him was really important. The thought of displeasing him or upsetting him was very distressing to me, and I just wanted to give him back something of what he'd given to me. Then there came a point where I went to a spring camp, and God really spoke to me in a very big way about training and doing some further study. And I ended up doing some informal Bible study. The pastor of the church used to recommend books to me and help me to understand things, and he started to teach me about more deep Bible study, if you want to call it that. Eventually we moved to another church, and a bit later on there was a real sense that yes, I've got to take up this Bible study again and do it more intensively, I guess. And so the opportunity came to go to Bible college with a couple of other ladies, and we started going to Bible college. And when I'd been doing that, going to Bible college one day a week for 3 years, then the penny dropped what it was all about, and actually that God was calling me to be a minister. And so a year of testing went on, whereby the call was tested and all the doors swung open, and I ended up training for ministry at Spurgeon's College in London. And it was brilliant, absolutely fantastic experience. Very intensive, because it was 3 days a week studying and 3 days a week working in a church, 1 day off supposedly. Unfortunately, my disposition has always been a little bit towards being a perfectionist, and so nothing I ever did I felt was quite good enough. So I pushed myself way beyond what I needed to, really. And at the end of the 3 years, I graduated with a first-class honours degree, but also ended up very, very ill with Crohn's disease, which had flared up big time during the last year. Nobody knew what it was at the time, but I had to have a lot of tests, and it was eventually diagnosed that year. And it was an interesting time. I was probably very ill, really, for about 5 or 6 months, really, but came through it. And yes, I've got a condition that I've had to learn to live with, but the experience of being ill has taught me so much on a pastoral level about empathising with people who are poorly, and there's so many lessons it's taught me for the pastoral ministry. It's been fantastic. In a way, it's a memory that I look back on with fondness. But as much as anything, I think the reason that I look back on it with fondness is because I think I learnt for the first time that God actually loves me completely for myself and not for what I do for him. And I realised that he loved me just as much when I was lying in my hospital bed as when I was rushing around doing stuff for him. There were times when I thought, Lord, what are you doing in all of this? How come I've trained for ministry and got to the end of the course with really good results and all the rest of it? But there was always a sense that God was in charge, and that it was a journey I'd got to go through, and it was okay. It was going to be okay, however it came out. And I always remember, strangely enough, someone saying to me, you're really going through a wilderness time at the moment, aren't you? And I agreed, but I also knew that God was with me in it. I didn't ever feel panicky. I just knew that it was going to be all right, and somehow he would use it all together for good, because that's what his word promises. And as I recovered, I was called to this church here as the part-time associate minister, and it was a real privilege to be called to come and work here, and it's been continued to be a wonderful privilege, and we've seen God do some amazing things in people's lives, and it's been really exciting to share my faith with other people and see other people come to faith and see God change their lives and take them through to do amazing things that they never considered possible, just as he's done with me. So I was the half-time pastor, associate pastor here for 3 years. Then the church, after a period of reflection, decided to make me the sole pastor here, sole full-time pastor. And at that point, we moved to Rye and moved on into the community, which has been really lovely. We absolutely love living here, and it's been lovely to be living closer to all the church family. I think for me, when I became a Christian, it was like I suddenly understood there was a purpose to life, and that there was suddenly a purpose for my life, and it wasn't just a random chance that I was here on the earth. It was God had a plan, and he had a job for me to do. It was almost like where life was a bit black and white. I don't mean it was ordinary, but suddenly it became glorious technicolor. It was just like life changed. Oh, my perspective of life changed, and of everything in life. You suddenly appreciate everything so much more.